Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It's January 24th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and we just had a range day today. Most of your highs were right along where this line is here, and then your lows were along here, and we had a little failed breakout up here in the morning, and then a little failed breakout the low side in the afternoon. But notice what normally happens is that these breakouts failed, and then you come back into the range again. Same thing down here. We failed, and we came back into the range once again. So I like these kind of days. Generally, you want to look for reversals off the highs to get short and reversals off the lows to get long. And if you get a failed breakout, if you get a setup outside way away from the EMA like this, you may want to take that, because generally those will lead to important lows or important highs. As you can see here, this was the high of the day. So if you did get short there, same thing down here. This was the low of the day. And at this point, this was an important low of the day because it led to the very high of the day. So sometimes you'll see me mark those trades. They're a little bit aggressive. You want to wait on a lower high off the highs and a higher low off the lows. But we didn't really get those on these breakouts. We didn't get a good opportunity. This was a possibility here. I'll talk about it when we get to it. I didn't mark it. You could probably argue for it to be green, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. But I like these kind of days. They're relatively predictable and pretty easy to trade. So anyway, there was a setup here. We were really in this tight range, and you could have gone short here, but it's so close to these lows. It actually went out this side. I don't know if it broke out, which side it broke out first. I'm not sure. If you'd gone short and it broke out this side first, you would have got stopped out here. But there's not enough room to get out. There is before the lows, but all these closes across here, I'd be very leery of them. And there's not enough room to get out there. So that probably should have been enough to maybe keep you out of this trade. So again, I didn't mark it because there's just not enough room to get out there. It would have worked, and you are coming off the highs of what looks like a range, so you're probably headed back down here. So it's a possibility. And it's right at the 7 o'clock hour. I mean, it's right there. You may not have been, even if you come in and start trying to trade at 7, you may not have been ready to trade yet. You got to be, you got to already be looking at this thing and kind of figuring out where prices are probably headed next, which off of the top up here, you'd figure they're headed to the lows. And that's exactly where they end up going. It takes them a little bit to get moving, but that's where they're going, and that's the expectation. There is a lower high here, fairly bearish bar. It's another possibility. But we didn't quite get back up here to test this breakout area yet. I'd want to see another try, which you get right here. And now you got a failed second entry long. Notice that new high. You get a first entry, second entry. And so now that's the better place to go short. And this one's even better because you get a little trap here. This one breaks lower, and it looks like it's going to be a trap, and then it turns back down and goes out the other side. I'd go short there, and I wouldn't even really have a problem getting short right here, one tick below that, because the lows had been further down here. And either way, you got plenty of room to get out before these lows. So unfortunately, it bounces a little higher this time. And you get a higher low here, but it's right back into the EMA. This trend line's still in place, so I'd be waiting and looking to see if we get a second entry short off this trend line, which we do. We actually get a break of it. But notice the new low, first entry, you move up, and then there's a second entry short when it broke below. That is an inside bar, but being off that key entry point and being that bearish and a second entry, I'd still take that trade. We get another second entry right here. Notice that new swing low. It's lower than that swing right there. So first entry, second entry. It's just a pretty neutral bar. Now we've bounced 3 times here, so you don't have a lot of room to get out. It's one you could maybe argue, since it is that key entry point, but we've already had a break here. I'll mark it green, but I think it's pretty risky, and I wouldn't take that trade. because it's too big a chance it bounces right here. I mean, there's probably enough room to get out before it bounces here, but you may bounce at the closes. And notice we actually did bounce right at the closes first, but it ends up pushing on lower. If it would have broke higher here, maybe another chance, but you've just bounced too many times in there by then. So I think that one's really risky. And of course, now we make the little failed break lower, so let's see if we get a high or low first. That's not a good enough signal bar. It's too neutral. You could argue, hey, you could use that for the signal bar, and you still got a little bit of room to go. So that's one of those. But when it didn't break high on this next bar and made that 2-bar matching high, that rules that out. So I would just X that out and say, nope, let's just wait. And you would expect that we're going to the other side, but guess what? This has been a pretty long trend down through here, a couple of hours, and this is the first break, so it's going to try for a retest here, and it does. I'd wait on the lower high. You get one here, but look at that stem, that big stem. No way I'm going short there. And then it comes back with a failed second entry long right here. The only problem is you're right back into these lows, but we'd already pushed through once, so you may risk that one. I went ahead and marked it because it does confirm that trend line right there, and we don't have a new low in place. And there is enough room to get out before here as well. They're just enough, but the more I think about this one, it's really risky. It probably ought to be at least green because we did just come off the low. I'm going to change that one to green. I went back and forth about it before, but because it was a failed second entry long there bouncing off that low, it's going to trap some longs probably. But you can see how strong that support was. Most people were still thinking long. And it runs up. You get a higher low here, and that's a possibility. But I was looking for a reversal pattern, which never really came here. We just shot on up. But that one's a possibility as well. That's your higher low. And it does close through the EMA, and you are looking for it to reverse. So that's probably the one you should have been waiting on versus trying to get short right there. I'm just going to mark them both green. And then notice we ran straight up to the top, and then you get a second entry long right here. Normally I'd like that trade, looking for a retest, but this is right into the highs. There's probably enough room here, but we just came off the highs, so there's too big a chance you get trapped and it turns down. So I just think you have to skip that one. And then we get the little failed breakout. Not a very good setup here to try to ride it back to the EMA. That's a fairly bearish bar, but when you didn't break below it here, and then you made a higher low here, and it didn't break higher here, I don't think I'm going short there. But then notice it pushes right through the EMA, and you get a first entry, and then right off the trend line again, you get a second entry short. That's where to go, because you're looking for prices now to come back down here. It's pretty obvious this is a range now, and you're just going to go from side to side. And it runs down, then you run up, first entry, and there's a second entry short right there. Boom, off it goes. And that was your first break of this trend line, but we're looking for prices to come down here. So on a second entry short right there, on a range day, I'm probably going to take that off a reversal pattern. And there's one last chance to get short if we're going back to these lows, but notice what's happened. You made a lower high, then you made a higher low, and you pushed out. You don't know that you won't make a higher low here. You don't know that it's pushing all the way back down here, even though that's the expectation. And this is just a first entry, but because it's a failed second entry long and a big bearish bar right off the EMA, it's a possibility if you want to be aggressive. So I'm going to at least mark it green. But generally what you want to do is you want to look to get short in the upper half, trying to ride it back down. And if you're trying to get long, you want to get long in the lower half, trying to get back up. Once you get to this far along, it's getting risky because you may bounce a little early. And that happens. But notice you move up and you get a higher low right here, but it's right into that EMA. You've really got a double top here. But you did just come off the low, so you're looking for a chance to ride it back to the highs. So for that reason, you could argue for it to be green. It runs up. This is the same thing we had on the opposite side. You get a failed second entry short right here. But we just came off the top, but that's the really first close outside that trend line, so it may try to run up. And you can see this one didn't quite get there. I still think it got enough, got just enough that you could have scalped out. So that's another one you could argue for, just like you could. It's basically the same trade as this one right here. So actually this one's a little bit different in that over here you've already had a break in a new low in place, where this is really the first close outside and you don't have a new high in place. So it's a little different in that aspect, but you just came off the highs and you don't know that you're going to push back, and this is a good example that you don't always get back. You did get enough to get out, but that's it. And then you get your failed second entry long right here. I like going short right there. And it just kind of starts going sideways there. I wouldn't enter any more over here until finally you try to go higher once, twice, and everything's closing right off that trend line. And you get this little double top with a little break higher in here, and I like going short when it goes below that bar. You could even still go short right here on this one. It's such a bearish bar. And this one you get to ride on down. Here's another one that's right into those lows. I wouldn't take that because it closes. Look how many times we try to get through there. And there's too big a chance it fails. In this case, it makes it through, but you don't know that ahead of time. And then we run up first entry, and look, you get a second entry right off the former support. Now it's acting as resistance on a second entry with a relatively bearish bar. And notice that new low, first entry, second entry. That one's probably worth taking just to try to get a scalp and a new low in place. And we could end up trending on down, but it doesn't. It doesn't even make a new low, and then it reverses and bounces. I did mark this one as a long just because you really got a double bottom right here. And then you move up, you get a first entry, and then you get a second entry, and it bounces right off that trend line on a failed second entry short, and it actually breaks lower and turns and goes out. I like going long right there because we just had a failed breakout, and the odds are we're going to get back in here, and that's what usually happens. And so that's what happens in this case. You wouldn't have got a runner here, but you would have got an easy scalp. And then you finally make a new low right here. I wouldn't enter out of this. That's just a little trading range congestion. But notice how it pushes up, pulls back first entry, pulls back second entry, and that's a second entry long on a perfect breakout pullback. It breaks out, it pulls back and tests it, and then it goes the other way. So when it went higher, you'd want to probably be on with it right there. Generally, I'd want to see this come back to the trend line, but there's a midline in here and an EMA, and it's kind of off that midline EMA. And so for that reason, I kind of like, on the second entry, I like that one. And that got you into the 2 o'clock hour. So again, just remember on range days, you want to look to get short off the highs or failed breakouts, and you want to get long off the lows. Once you start to get into, if you're trying to go long and ride it back, once you get into the upper half, it starts to get dangerous going long. Same thing if you're trying to ride it back down off the highs. Once you get into the lower half, it gets dangerous trying to get short. So the closer you can get long down here on a good setup, or the closer you can get short off this line on a good setup, the better you're off you're going to be. This was a fairly, I mean, this range is 26, 30, we'll just call it 33 to 45 or so. This is like a 12-point range. So it's a big enough range that you could get a little trend in there and work the trend. So if this was tighter, I'd say you'd have to be more strict about getting long off the lows or short off the highs. And we did really get some consistent lows and highs. You can see it's really consistent right across here, moving higher, and it's really consistent off here, moving lower. So that makes it a lot easier than when you get these ranges where you don't have a consistent low and high area to measure and work from. So this was a good day. I like today. And hopefully you had some good trades today. But it's going to wrap it up for the week. No chart lessons on Friday, so I'll be back again to do it Monday. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.